Hey folks, David Stewart here. Time for another Thinking Thursday video. Today it is gambling as a form of savings. And if that idea sounds completely wackadoodle, let me try to explain. Before I explain, let me say this is not my idea. I don't even know where I first encountered this idea, whether it was in a magazine or like an economics lecture or a blog or something, but it's one that seems to be a rather interesting one whenever I talk to somebody, particularly somebody who's into economics or who's an economist. The basic idea of gambling as a form of savings is that you have uncertainty about when you are going to get your payout. But statistically, you will eventually get a payout. And due to the uncertainty of when you get the payout and due to the fact that the payout is a large sum, it acts like a form of savings, with the house cut being like a service fee for savings. Keep in mind that most people are used to gaining interest on savings because we have a fractional reserve banking system. But that's not necessarily the case if you were to not have a fractional reserve system. If you had a full reserve system, you'd have to pay the bank for the privilege of storing your money and keeping it secure. Some sort of service fee, if you will. So in this case, the service fee would be the house cut. So it works something like this. Let's say you're somebody who gambles regularly, and you gamble regularly at like a poker machine. So when I lived in Las Vegas, I knew people that did this. They gambled all the time at the little video poker machines that were in the bar tables. They'd put in 10, 15, 20 bucks and they'd gamble. They'd gamble like every week, maybe a couple times a week. Now, the thing about that is that the odds are fixed by the Nevada Gaming Commission. And if you play the game a certain way, the way that's going to maximize the likelihood of you getting that royal flush, eventually you're going to get the big payout. You're going to get the royal flush that's going to give you $1,800 or $2,000. The thing is, you don't know when that payout is going to occur. So the uncertainty is when it's going to happen. So when it does happen, you have a large lump sum, $2,000. And the idea behind this gambling as a form of savings is that the individual who's gambling wouldn't be able to save up enough to have that large lump sum of $2,000 on their own. Their own spending habits would prevent them from saving up $2,000. So by gambling, maybe they're having a good time, but they're able to essentially gain access to a large sum of money, which they can then spend on a TV or a vacation or a new car or some other thing that they need to save up for in order to get their money, in order to exercise control over their money. A smart person would say, well, they should just save their money directly, but that's often easier said than done for people who live paycheck to paycheck or who have spending habits that result in them basically spending all their money as often as they can. By having gambling available, or regular gambling in which they can only spend a certain amount of money due to their own financial constraints, it actually acts as a kind of savings. And I wanted to talk about this idea because I think it's a really weird one. It's one that I find a little bit deficient, because the problem with it is that we are assuming that people who are unable to save for the long term are going to be able to spend in the short term in a way that's wise when it comes to gambling. Gambling is something that we have to recognize as either addictive or potentially addictive. This is why there is so much controversy over the inclusion of things like loot boxes and things like FIFA, video games, because you are putting a gambling mechanic into a piece of software that is marketed towards children. If we know that gambling is addictive because it has what my understanding is the highest behavior altering kind of reinforcement is random reinforcement. And that's exactly what you get with gambling. You randomly win money. You can't determine when it happens. So that tends to have the strongest psychological effect on reinforcement. It's highly reinforcing and therefore can be highly addictive. So if a person is unable to put $20 in the bank account every week in order to save up to $2,000, without using that money for something else before they get to that large sum, are they going to be able to stop at $20? Some people can't. However, I mentioned my experience in Las Vegas. I've known plenty of people that can happily gamble $20 and not feel bad about losing the $20 and not feel like they have to spend another $20 to try to make their money back. And it might be something about just people who live in Las Vegas that, we're surrounded with gambling. We live with it all the time. So it just becomes a regular thing and a thing that you just get used to as a thing you could spend money on to have fun, and maybe you win some money. So it might be the proximity to gambling that makes it less addictive. I'm not sure. But I knew lots of people in Las Vegas that gambled, and I don't think any of them had what I would call an addictive problem with gambling. That's not to say that nobody there did. It's just my sample of people didn't include anyone who had that addictive problem. So anyway, there's some of the problems with this thesis, or this idea that gambling could be a form of savings. Particularly, this is directed towards people who are low income. Right? Low income people are going to spend all the money they have. They're not going to be good at saving. So it acts as a service to them. But are these the kind of people that are going to be able to stop at $20 or $40? That's the question that I pose to you. And so I'm going to more or less leave it there. Give me your opinions down below on this idea of gambling as a form of savings. I will say that this idea does not compute when it comes to certain other things that have gambling-like mechanics in them, like loot boxes, right? Getting a rare soccer player in FIFA cannot be converted to some sort of currency as if you have saved money. When it comes to something like Magic the Gathering, it possibly could be, because you can sell the cards that you get. But when it comes to digital goods, absolutely this sort of thing doesn't apply. There's no benefit rendered to the person by giving them a digital good. The benefit comes that they're able to play the game better, which isn't really any kind of tangible benefit at all. It's nothing that can be converted into actual currency the way a physical Magic card or Yu-Gi-Oh card or whatever collectible card game you're thinking of that involves a gambling mechanic. There's a gambling mechanic, gotcha mechanic, when you buy a Magic pack, that you're hoping to get a good enough card that you can either sell or trade for money. And of course, maybe cards that you want to use to play the game as well. So I don't see this translating very well outside of just very specific kinds of gambling where the odds are very fixed and the house takes a percentage cut, kind of like what's determined by the Nevada Gaming Commission. And even then, I think there's problems with it, but I want to get your opinion. So leave me your opinion down below. Is this a little bit short-sighted, or is it something that can actually act as a service for some people? And thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.